you for joining us on day 2 of NANOG 95. My name is Nick Bogle, and I'm on the NANOG Program Committee. I'll be the session moderator for this morning's presentations. I'd like to introduce Leif Sawyer, who will be presenting the 2025 Board of Directors candidate session. He's a network engineer at GCI Communications and traveled from Anchorage, Alaska to join us today. This is Leif's 4th time presenting at NANOG. You may recognize him from the two previous Board of Directors candidate sessions, or from his first talk at NANOG 75, Minimizing Impact of Errand Policies Upon the Operator Community, way back in 2019 in San Francisco. Welcome back to NANOG. Leif, it is a pleasure to have you back with us today.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Good morning, everyone. I've had quite a few compliments on my choice of outfits for this year. I'm family Tulloch Clan Ross, and so I'm wearing this in memoriam because we love. Kick things off here. I'm going to read a prepared statement, and then we'll move on to candidate introductions. So as you may or may not have heard or read in the elections pages, the NANOG Elections Committee has published the board candidate session participation, and it's tied to in-person attendance. We always invite the candidates to participate in person here, noting that remote participation is not accommodated. Unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, Michael Costello informed the committee of a change in his situation and his availability to attend in person, but we do note that he is still and fully eligible candidate for the NANOG Board of Directors. So please do not let his missing chair down there deter you from your votes. Thank you for that. So I will start, I guess, here. We'll start up front with my closest board candidate here, Steve Ulrich, and have him take a minute or two to talk to what he's presenting.
My name's Steve Ulrich. I've been a longtime NANOG attendee and participant. Over the better part of 25 years, I've been very actively engaged in NANOG in the vendor community, both as an attendee and as a presenter. Over the past 5 years, I've really kind of engaged the community more actively with participation in the election committee, program committee, a hackathon committee, and a workshop. Beyond that, I was also recently appointed in the kind of interim board position, which frankly kind of pushed me over the edge to run in this fine election. I'm really hoping to just continue to engage in contributing to the community and see what we can do in order to grow NANOG as a community and organization and increase the relevance of NANOG in the broader networking industry.
All right, thanks, Steve. Next up is everyone should recognize Leslie Daigle.
Thanks, indeed. I am Leslie Daigle. I've been participating in NANOG since early 2000s at any rate, somewhat sporadically, until 3 years ago when I was appointed to and then elected to the NANOG board. I've been participating in the Internet institution space for 30 years anyway, largely starting with the Internet Engineering Task Force and participating in various working groups there. The Internet Architecture Board, chaired the Internet Architecture Board, helped the IETF move beyond its initial complete lack of governance structure into having a more modern governance structure, including financial accountability. Have been, worked for not-for-profits and for-profits throughout the course of my career, largely focused on trying to ensure the internet remains free and open for as many purposes as possible. And that includes fostering collaboration between industry infrastructure operators, even, would-be competitors sometimes need to work together in order to solve major problems, whether it's deploying IPv6 or, improving the state of the routing system security. So that's the space that I like to play in, whether it's in my day job, which is at the Global Cyber Alliance, or whether it's in participating in the community like this. And that's what I, would like to continue to do to help, help organize and participate in the NANOG board and help keep moving NANOG from we've slowed the trajectory towards the bottom financially. Let's turn that around and, bring ourselves back up. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, next up, Kendra Pignotti.
Hi, my name is Kendra Pignotti, and I have only been in this industry 10 years, so I do not have a lifelong industry experience, but I have NANOG very much to thank for my industry experience. When I started attending about a decade ago, I did not know anything technical at all, and I have this wonderful community to thank for that, which got me involved in first the election committee, then the mentorship committee, where I have been mentored and have been a mentee as well. I serve as an ambassador before the ambassador program came along because I knew what it was like to be a wallflower and not quite know where to fit in this community. So I have found that it is very vital to give back to the community that really has allowed me to grow and prosper so much in this space that I love so much. I actually come from the commercial side, which I know gets a lot of size at this event at times, but I think the ability to come and be educated and learn about the technical side enriches our ability, because one doesn't really function without the other. And that is why my ability to grow new markets and open up and be able to work with network engineers globally across for the last decade, because of this organization, being able to manage budgets, projects on time, deliver key components, doing what I say when I say, is why I think that if that's the kind of person you want on the board, I really think that I am prepared to work very hard for NANOG, because I believe in it at its root foundation. And I loved the finances. For those of you that weren't at the member meeting, what the current board has been able to do in the last year to rein in the finances is something that everybody should be very proud of. We have to continue to do that to make us continue to be relevant.
All right, thank you. Marlene.
Hello, my name is Marlene Martez. And before I even start, I just want to say, isn't it amazing we have 3 women up on the candidate slate for the board? Like, come on, that's impressive. On the positive note, like following off of what Kendra said, I think that NANOG is on the way out of being a sinking ship as it was couple of years ago. It felt really, really bleak during the pandemic, which is around the time that I started really to join the community. I have volunteered for the program committee, the community engagement committee, the audit committee. I've kind of been all around NANOG, so a lot of people might be tired of me, but that's okay, because persistence is key. And that's what I bring along to my candidacy for the board membership. I am passionate about the community. I want to focus on growth, legacy, and connection. And I feel that we could all use a little bit of that fire that is kind of necessary to kind of get NANOG to be more exciting and more relevant with the younger crew, but also getting the older pipeline of our retiring members more engaged and also more relevant to the organization. So yeah.
Thank you. And last, John at the end.
Yeah, so I'm John Van Oppen. I've been coming to NANOG for quite a long time. I was just thinking about that this morning, actually. My first NANOG, I'm pretty sure, was NANOG 34 in Seattle, in the Westin Hotel next to the Westin building, which was also the year I graduated college. So NANOG has played a really integral part in my life over the last 2 decades. And, I want to, as I've had more time more recently and stepped away from some of my management roles in the day jobs that I've built over the course of building 4 ISPs from both a technical and a management standpoint, I want to give back more. About 10 years ago, I spent a fair amount of time on the program committee and doing NANOG on the road stuff. When we were doing that program, I've always enjoyed the outreach, and I love seeing the fire in the young engineers that come and want to learn. And it's not just engineers anymore. We have young salespeople, we have young business development folks. As the technical and business parts of the industry have effectively merged into one solve, it's been fun to watch those groups kind of cross-populate into NANOG. And, I want to be here to help NANOG be successful into the future. I also want to echo some of the comments of the work over the last year. I think it's been critically important that we got NANOG on a better financial track. I mean, I think I stood up about a year ago in one of the members meetings was like, we just can't keep doing this. Our primary goal has to be sustainable. Everything comes after being sustainable, because we want to be here for people in the future. And that's, the vision that I'm hoping to push with my candidacy here, and be of service if necessary to NANOG and help it prosper and create the next generation of engineers. I want to see more young people involved. That's really near and dear to my heart. I worry as I see us aging as a group. I was kind of the young guy in the first group, and the average age is going up. And if we can help reach out and build NANOG and build that core group of people of the future, that's got to be our mission.
All right. Thank you so much. So to help sort out between all of these 5 extremely qualified candidates here, we, the elections committee, not we, because I'm not on the elections committee this time. The elections committee has thoughtfully provided me with a list of questions that we'll be talking to. I'll give you about 2 minutes to answer each question, and I'll pick randomly here for which person to start, and we'll just sort of walk down the line and then wrap back as we need to. So first off, I guess, Steve, you're closest. So I'm going to pick on you again. And just, in the 2 minutes, tell us about any relevant experience that you feel helps prepare you for serving on the NANOG board that you may not have covered in your intro.
Well, my intro was brief. I think the relevant experience comes not so much from being an engineer or frankly, business oriented, but really from being around the community for a long time across a range of domains, whether that's first mile service providers, transit providers, hyperscalers, and working to bring my relationships and engagement in those various domains here to NANOG with the program committee, and then also serving and seeing what's going on in the individual committees. To get an idea of what's going on underneath the hood of our community. Broadly, I'm really I've grown up with NANOG, in this industry, and you have certain blind spots around your lived experience with that. And one of the things that I've been trying to do in engaging in the various committees is to understand kind of the breadth and take an objective look at what's going on here. So I think an open, admittedly engineering-oriented mind towards addressing some of the challenges that we might be facing, as well as building bridges across domains is something that I'd like to bring to the community here and effectively do within the context of the board.
Great, thank you. I'm going to wrap around back to John, and we'll come back towards me.
Okay, so relevant experience for the board. So I think for me, that kind of breaks down into a couple categories. Obviously, I've been an engineer for a long time and come at this from an engineering perspective. I've also been a CEO of 2 ISPs and been the lead technical business leader for 2 ISPs as well. Those ISPs are reasonably large. I think NANOG for a long time suffered from a lack of access ISP participation in those perspectives. And so I want to bring that perspective and that history of managing those businesses to kind of bring that perspective into NANOG a little bit more. Unfortunately, there aren't that many of those left in the US that are big and willing to participate. And I've always wanted to help bring that piece.
Oh, thank you. Marlene.
Oh, okay. So can you repeat the question? So
Sure. It's just let us know about any relevant experience that you feel helps prepare you for your board candidacy.
Okay, so I was born ready. That's the easy answer. Second, no, in all seriousness, this is my second time running. So I've been on the stage before with answering similar questions. And I think what sets me apart is that I am very persistent. I do not stop. I am like the Terminator. And that honestly it seems like I'm joking, but I'm really not, because anything that I dedicate myself to, I am very passionate about, and I will ensure that I am constantly trying to meet the expectations and or surpass them. In terms of my experience for the board, I'll talk a little bit more about what I do outside of NANOG. I serve as the marketing director for the Latinos at Amazon Affinity Group, and I've been in that position for around 3 years, engaging our community, our Amazonians, and I'm sorry, external communities to Amazon, and kind of like bringing into the fold different sources of funding. So a lot of the similar challenges that NANOG has had, we've been very successful at engaging a younger demographic, communities that aren't aware of our message of what Amazon can bring to the fold for different communities, and I guess like diverse communities. I know that's something that we're kind of shying away from using that word, but it's true. I'm also I pay a lot of attention to details. So in one of my former roles, I was a forensic accountant. So I like my job was literally to look at the numbers deeply and figure out what went wrong and where did they go. So bringing that kind of like analytical insight into, I mean, I know we're doing fantastic on the financials. Thank you to the already serving board members. But kind of bringing that kind of insight into looking at data, looking at trends, and seeing where we could be forecasting on, you know, what we could do better to kind of bring our engagement up. So one metric, for example, that I did a little bit of research on since NANOG 84 using the conferencing tool, is that at no point has there been over 15% of women participating at a NANOG meeting since NANOG 84. So that should strike you, because it's always been between 10 to 15%. And even at this meeting, we're at 14%. So how do we get that number up? I can help with that. So.
All right. Thank you. Kendra.
First and foremost, I am a people person. I am driven. I am results oriented. I will do what I say I'm going to do. That is the most basic way to put it. If you'd like more detail on that, is I believe that if you are willing to work with people, you can always come up with a solution. But we have to remember, this is a business. And I think the current board realized that. I think that was something that had been forgotten. It's an education organization, yes, but it is a business first, and you must run it like it's a business. You must make sure your financials are in line. You must make sure that you're hitting your milestones. You must make sure that you're holding people accountable. And that means us. We are a working board. And that means if you do not have the time to commit to what is required to be on this board, you should not be running. You should own that you don't have the time, and that is okay. Not every one of us, our day jobs allow what this commitment is, because I promise you, this commitment is a lot more than what is even put out in the document of what you need to be available for the board. So you have to understand fundamentally how a business works, what the OPEX is, what the CAPEX is, what these contracts look like. I also have a legal background as well, so I'm quite good at looking over contracts, as well as making sure that you're communicating with anybody at any time about things. We work in a global world. That is our our industry. So you have to be able to be willing to do that. Yes, we are North America, but you always hear you have to make sure that we have accessibility to people to Europe and APAC. And I think that's something we need to consider. But I am going to say something and it's going to probably make a lot of people upset. I think we need to look bigger at the scope of these meetings, that is not the main factor in where we pick to have these meetings, because this is a North American NOG. There are a lot of other NOGs, and Jonathan spoke at the members meeting that we're now having groups, what works, what doesn't work. So I think we may even need to look broader at the scope of how we pick where we go, because this is a North American NOG, and maybe we are stretching ourselves a little too far, and that's something that we may want to look at as a board as well.
All right, thank you. And Leslie.
Sure. So one of the things that I would say about my experience is that an awful lot of work, starting with working at the IETF, focused on trying to arrive at consensus. And that really is about understanding not what is my best idea, but rather where do people want to go and how can we, find the optimal line through where people want to go and achieve it. I recall as IEB chair walking into meetings thinking nobody's going to want to talk about this particular administrative topic. I better have a plan. So I'd walk in with a plan, say, well, here's my plan. And, a dozen engineers would dive on it, shred it, and come up with something that was far, far better than my tiny little brain could come up with. But it was by focusing the discussion on, what is the problem we're trying to solve and what are the parameters? How can we get consensus on where we want to go and get buy-in that really drove that. And so that's sort of what I bring to all of my professional engagements. I would say also that I have a habit of trying in those conversations of trying to get people to focus on options they might have thought were not on the table, things that they thought might be a stretch too far, and say, no, you have to actually think through, are we going to cancel the meeting in, such and such a place because of whatever conditions? We can do that. It would be very expensive, but do we want to do that? And no, if not, then let's figure out what the important pieces are. So driving people to really think through the full extent of what it is that they want to achieve and can consider. And then in terms of practical experience, I've variously run my own consulting company, been part of startups, been in senior management, and interfaced with the boards in my day job. So I know what boards are looking for in terms of preparing materials. And the NANOG board is not the first board I've been on. I've been on board like pieces of the IETF, and I was on a commercial board eons ago at the first company I worked at in Montreal.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Question number 2, and I'm going to start with Marlene. That's right. Yeah, you weren't expecting that. What steps do you take to ensure collaboration and consensus while making tough decisions?
I think the most important step in collaboration to make decisions is everybody needs to have a voice. So for me, it's more of like an active listening period, and hearing out what everyone has to say. Because if we're a community or we're a small group, I've definitely been in that role where I feel like maybe I have a good idea, but I'm not going to say it because I'm too shy to speak up. I'm too shy to, or maybe I think that it's, it's just not good enough to share with the group. So I have learned from leaders in my immediate circle that the best way to collaborate, the best way to get at a good firm decision is to make sure that everyone has a voice, everyone has a vote, everyone has been considered. That's one. And then secondly, if there is an opinion or a thought that differs from the rest of the group, not to completely dismiss it, kind of like we say a lot, like have backbone and commit a lot at Amazon, which means that we might not agree on a lot of things, but ultimately we have to make a decision. So let's kind of like come to an agreement together. And even if I disagree with something, I'm still on board for the better of the of the mission, like the overall goal. So for me, it's more like, yeah, that would be mostly my strategy. Listen and disagree, but then come together and, you know.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. John.
So I think actually, I like to start with defining the problem. One of the things that I've, kind of learned with the engineering teams over the years is that sometimes we think we're talking about the same problem, but we're not. And I've learned that a lot at NANOG in these, you listen to the stuff that comes up to podiums and things like, I'm not sure that question was the same problem. And I think the first thing is to have a two-way discussion, trying to define the problem we're trying to solve. And then you jump in to, I have an idea, what's your idea? Let's go back and forth. And you have to have that back and forth. And frankly, the more vigorous, the better, and the more fact-driven, the better, in my mind, because we're trying to make decisions based on facts and consensus, but we also want to make sure we know the decision we're making up front and why, and defining that, what is the decision and why are we trying to address it before you even jump into making it. It's sometimes the piece we just don't always do. And I'm not saying that nobody here does it, but like as humans, we like to kind of jump to the argument sometimes before we've defined the problem fully. And at least in my board experience, defining the problem was sometimes the most important thing. What are we trying to solve here? And then you drive into how. And I think that's something that I actually do pretty well with at the table with engineers and with the business teams.
All right. Thank you. Steve.
So I think the responses thus far have been very good in terms of kind of capturing the essence of strong decision making and ensuring that folks find their voice in understanding the problem, conveying what they perceive as being potential outcomes or solutions to the problem. I really liked Marlene's comment about being able to disagree and commit. To ensure that there's vigorous debate around whatever the agreed upon problem definition is. The other thing that I think is important in terms of kind of coming to consensus and to making decisions is evaluating and coming up with defining the success criteria and how they'll be measured in terms of if we are to undertake a particular course of action, how do we ensure that we're actually affecting the change that we want to to achieve, and then what are our what are our decision criteria for maybe having to make an adjustment to our plan of action. So I think you'll find broad consensus here around what goes into making effective decisions as a group, and I think personally it will also require I found myself having to refactor how I think about problems in a nonprofit organization. Like, while we should be striving towards the rigor of business-oriented decision making, we want to make sure that we're a community. Recognize that we're part of a community, and that we want to foster that community. So, there may be additional soft considerations that we need to evaluate. I don't think I would fundamentally do anything different than what's been expressed here, but personally, being more cognizant of what might be the second order effects of the decisions that we make, and how do we go about measuring the primary objective and ensuring that we're not breaking other things.
All right. Thank you, Leslie.
So in terms of my personal approach to driving towards consensus, the way I view it is to get everybody focused on what is the problem that we are all trying to solve. So instead of it being my idea, your idea, back and forth, we're all on the same side of the table, bringing our best abilities to solve the problem at hand. And then as you go along, just sort of start teasing out where are the knots, where are the sticking points, and how can we address those, and reach some level of agreement.
All right. Thank you. And I think Kendra then.
Going last is not fun, especially on a question like this. So no, active listening is key when you're trying to come to consensus, and it is absolutely identifying what is the problem to make sure that everyone is very clear on what we're trying to obtain. I think, as Steve mentioned, being on this board, we are actively solving problems for a community, that is an organization, that makes it twofold. So it's a little bit different take on that, but making sure you have a clear, solvable solution you're trying to reach. And over the years, as somebody that is very outgoing and all those things, I have learned the less I say and the more I listen, the easier it is to hear the other people and what they're saying to be able to get a better understanding and come to a consensus and hear everybody's point of view to be able to pull those little nuggets out from everybody at a much easier pace and get to that solution faster.
Right, thank you. That takes us to question number 3 here. And we will start with John. What are your ideas to help NANOG reach and include the next generation of networking professionals?
That's a really good question. So like this is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. How do you get more young people involved? You know, I think I've watched a little bit of the rise of some social media network engineers, and I've also noticed that not a single one of those shows up at NANOG, at least that I've noticed. And they do show up at some of the other conferences I go to, which is really interesting to me. But I really I think we've got to do everything we can to make engineering interesting. And you know, network engineering to the more recent generation has become the thing that happens in the background that drives the cloud, and the cloud is the thing. So I don't have a specific answer, but I really want to open it up to the community of how do we pull people in? What are folks excited about? How do we bring those things onto the front of the stage in NANOG? So, you know, AI, what are we doing in AI networking? How do we bring more of those conversations in? Should we bring conversations in about, you know, power and sourcing that for data centers? Because that's become a big theme in our industry. You know, the whole business decision tree also seems to be missing a lot of the time from NANOG, and helping engineers understand how the business works behind what they're engineering is another thing that's sort of close to my heart, in bringing in additional kind of parallel groups from these organizations, because we as operators of all types, we're not building a network, we're building a business machine. And I think the network engineering is part of it, but it's only part of it. And increasingly that's power, that's geography, it's fiber routes, it's raising capital, it's all of these aspects. And the more we can do to help our community understand and learn about those things, the more our members will be prepared to take the next bigger job. And I think that's the key to getting people in, is to give them that path to being more than the thing they are today. That's what NANOG gave me 20 years ago.
All right, thank you. Which direction am I going here? If I have one, this is Steve.
Could you repeat the question again? I think
You can repeat the question again. What are some of your ideas to help NANOG reach and include the next generation of networking professionals?
Thanks. You know, it's interesting. You brought up the notion of influencers, network influencers, and the not being here at NANOG. I think that's a well-placed remark. I think as an industry, we are undergoing through a bit of an interesting change. We are shrinking in terms of raw numbers, and we're fracturing in terms of specialization. And so, we have. I don't know that we have provided the younger engineers with a growth path towards what has been, and maybe this is a perceived growth path, but from enterprise networking to service provider to various forms of different types of specific service provider networking. And I think we as NANOG have been perceived broadly as being, if this is the place to go if you're a service provider. And it has not necessarily, I think, been perceived as, where do I go if I'm just getting into networking? And we need to, in my estimation, and from what I'm seeing, provide a bit of a pathway for folks who might have a history in enterprise networking, to, or background in enterprise networking to be welcomed here, and to engage. And maybe we should be looking broadly at the options for marketing, for lack of a better term, in working with those influencers to understand and educate them about what NANOG does and what it has provided. And I think we also would do well to look at how our industry is fragmenting or specializing and seeing, what are the things that we can be learning from those who are building very specialized networks in the, let's say, for picking on AI, networking domain, for instance, or addressing what's going on in the access and first mile space. To some extent, we may have been perceived as the place where you go to facilitate peering, and not to talk about more specialized aspects or research. We need to keep that flavor, but also provide something that is maybe more accessible broadly.
All right, thank you. Marlene.
Okay, so I have a few thoughts. First, I think we need to keep it simple. I think we just need to make NANOG fun. And in the sense that if you're a young professional and you're looking to go to any conference or join any groups or join a nonprofit or serve on a board or be a volunteer, any of those varieties, you want to do something that you feel passionate and engaged with. If you don't feel like the message of that organization or the mission fuels you, then you're not going to want to join it or represent it. Simple. And for me, I think it's not just about, okay, like how do we become fish bait, because that's not what we want. But what are the opportunities that we can identify to engage this younger generation in the right way? And I think we've already started to take steps towards that. I know that we're putting some dollars towards marketing, better marketing materials, but we really have to make our networks work for us. So personally, on my LinkedIn, I have, I don't know how many followers, but I'm constantly posting and talking to other people and tagging, and it generates buzz. It gets other younger folk in the industry to kind of like look up to me and follow the steps that I'm doing. So what can the board members be doing to kind of like, make ourselves a little bit more uh, fun and friendly to, some of this younger generation? We're going to have to be a little bit more creative about how we're engaging them. We're also going to have to probably seek into more of like student-led groups from different universities, or even like nonprofits that are also convening. We can think about women in tech and girls who code, things along the lines of those organizations. How can we form those types of partnerships to kind of like get some of those attendees to kind of trickle into the NANOG, see if there are any overlaps there. But yeah, that's
Okay, great, thank you. Leslie.
So I think that a key to addressing that particular challenge is related to a challenge we've been trying to solve for a while, which is to say, if there's another pandemic, how do we deal with not having meetings for a few years, because it will create a risk financially? So namely, we can slip into thinking that NANOG is three meetings per year series that happens to have a mailing list and now some Discord channels. And what we really need to think of it is, it's the North American Network Operator Group that does stuff, and then, through those channels or elsewhere, and then happens to meet 3 times a year. Because the younger generation doesn't typically have management willing to sign off on them traveling 3 times a year. May need to do some things to get interested and engaged before they're going to even try to travel even once a year. So I think that the key thing moving forward is leverage that new search engine facility for our content, and pull out some gems from our past and find ways to get that into pockets of the younger generations who are maybe spread a couple here and a couple there in different organizations, and just sort of help build that sense of community even outside of the context of these meetings. And then people will find a way to come to these meetings and, meet face to face and meet other people.
All right. Thanks, Leslie. And Kendra.
Touching on what Steve and Leslie said, network operators are definitely segmented now. You definitely have what we do as kind of working, as you said, people thought peering and how ISPs connect to things, and then now you have a very different channel of cloud and what that looks like, and enterprise and what that looks like. And I think all of those things actually are touched on very much here, but I don't think that marketing message is been out there. Again, I follow NANOG on LinkedIn, so I absolutely repost that because I know I have a large network. But I also think with Leslie, I go to our YouTube page and look at things. When I meet someone new at a cloud event, at a WISP up event, I always recommend that they go to NANOG. I had an Uber driver that took me and he was like, "How'd you get into this?" Because I said, "I don't have an engineering background. I fell into this by the London Internet Exchange hiring me way back when I knew nothing. And I went to this event, and from going to these talks, I learned all this information." And he's like, "Well, can you scan?" And I scanned my LinkedIn. I said, "Message me, I'll send you the information." And I sent him to the NANOG YouTube page. And I said, "You really ought to, try attending hybrid," because he doesn't have all that. He wants to be on the more engineering side. He obviously clearly got that I was on the commercial side. But those are the kind of things that I do regularly to kind of push people. It was lovely to hear that we're going to make those videos a lot more accessible. So getting that stuff that's accessible for all of us that care so much about this community, having the ability to have a conversation. If you have a new hire, having them watch some key videos of things that you've seen at these events that can educate them, and honestly, maybe not take up 4 hours of your day of training. It's not a bad thing. And it gets them engaged. And that maybe as they grow from being very green and junior in your organization, you're likely to say, "Okay, year 2, I'm willing to send you to a NANOG because I've seen your growth in my organization." I just happened to work for an organization from the very beginning that happened to be like the gold sponsor that year. I'll be honest, that's probably the only reason I was able to go that year. And then grew in the organization very quickly and was allowed to go. So I think that if we push that information out of these things, those channels that everybody thinks that NANOG doesn't represent, they do. They're in these talks. They're just, people still think we're the old heads. We're not the old heads. We are very much in those spaces. If you look at our agenda, it's how we push it out to them. And it's our jobs as members, not just board, but as members. But as board, we need to be leading that, "Hey, can you push that out? Can you do this? Can you do that?" And I think that's a big way that we can engage without it being overly taxing. No real cost involved in that because we're redoing that on our website to make that available anyways.
All right. Thank you, Kendra. You brought up costs involved in this outreach and everything, and that actually leads us right into our next question, which I'm going to start with Leslie, just because I feel it's really appropriate here. Given the NANOG budget and strategic plan, what do you see as the most important priorities for NANOG in the near future?
So I think I'm going to say pretty much the same thing I said the last time I was on the stage 3 years ago, which is that we have to diversify our sources of revenue. To be strictly meetings based is challenging going forward. I think that the staff and the executive director have done a wonderful job of sort of refocusing, retuning, and redirecting the trajectory of NANOG finances. But again, trying to think big and think about our mission, right? Our mission is education, and we have to stay focused on being the best network operator group that we can be, whatever that actually means, whatever form that takes. Because that's where we find our definition of success. How can we do that in ways that are not just the meetings, but also other modalities of reaching out? And then how can we, frankly, how can we monetize them? And by monetization, I don't mean how can we, improve shareholder value, because that's not who we are, but rather how can we find other services where we can attract companies to sponsor us, or support the distribution of content, or pay for training, or otherwise, otherwise drive up more revenue streams.
Great, thank you. Steve, I'm going to continue with the board. Same question to you.
I think Leslie really nailed the priorities here in terms of ensuring the sustainability of this community is critically important. The dependence upon meetings is, I think, a challenge. It becomes a challenge for sponsors. It becomes a challenge for staff, and finding the other ways to provide community value that can ensure the sustainability. As a non-profit, educationally oriented organization, it is, as Leslie notes, not about enhancing shareholder value, which is probably the primary objective of 90% of this room, whether we care to admit it or not most of the time. But like ensuring that that NANOG is going to be around as the nexus of discussion for operators in North America, and whether that takes the form of working with partner organizations, educational institutions, and bringing folks in. I really do think that the primary focus and the priority is the sustainability and durability of NANOG as an organization and community for operators.
All right, thank you. Kendra, if you could take us next.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Given the NANOG budget and strategic plan, what do you see as the most important priorities for NANOG in the near future?
Well, I think maintaining the financial responsibility that we've seen just in the last year, that was shown at the member meeting. So this current seated board is clearly demonstrated that it can be done, which is very different from what we've seen over the previous years. And I like that we're not counting on money that we don't know will or will not be there. But to not necessarily reiterate what Leslie said is, I think it often gets lost in the fact that NANOG is an event. NANOG is an education organization. And that's something that I am very aware of. But I think you would be remiss if you thought you walked around these corridors and that is the answer you would get. So I think that NANOG, to maintain all these other ways, I think we need to do with this marketing we're doing, really focus on that market, that remarketing that we're doing to push all the other avenues of this education that will continue to align with really watching our financials to make sure that we are able to be a continuing educational organization, which we are. We are not an event organization. And I think that most people that are members of NANOG think of us as an event organization, not the education. And that is part of ensuring our financial security, is figuring out a way to get that message out there to our community in a positive way. But ensuring that we do that is probably the best way that we can ensure that we continue on this upward slope with our financials.
Thank you very much. John.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to give a little bit of a contrarian view to this. So, while NANOG is an educational organization, it is about as much an educational organization as the University of Washington is a university. It's actually a medical system financially. And this is a conference financially. We are 90+% tied to the conference revenue. NUNOG was formed originally to keep the conference going and get it away from merit so that it could keep going. That was why it was formed. I know because I gave the first $10,000. So, and some people in this room will remember that a long time ago when we were doing it. But I think it's really important that we remember we have an educational mission, but we don't have the educational mission without producing the financial results from our conference to fund that. We can't be a service to our members. And there's some comments about shareholders here and stuff. And we don't have shareholders, we have members. So I think it's important to remember the duty is to the members here to provide the service the members think they're getting. If that's changed from outreach to randoms to running a really good conference, we should run a really good conference and try to get people into the conference. We got to listen to our members and what they want, how they want us to shape that educational mission. And I'm not saying I know the answer of what it is, but right now the answer is it's a conference. And I'd love it to be all these other things, but it frankly isn't economically. And we got to get that to be sustainable. The board's done a really good job growing it, growing the revenue from that and minimizing the expenses. But we're not there yet. We have work to do. We have a couple of years of work to do at the current rates of improvement. We've got to get the conference back to producing, $500,000 a conference or something, if we want to have any funds available for doing any of that outreach. I mean, one of the most important things we did earlier in the sort of NUNOG era was NANOG on the Road. That reached a lot of people that wasn't in it. A few of the people I see in the room participated in that. I went to 5 or 6 of them and presented. I found that way more fun to present at than the main NANOG. And that was because of the outreach. But we can't do that unless the conference and our main functions are producing a fair amount of money. We just don't have the resources. And I'm going to leave it there, but I think it's really important to think about what our primary business function is that allows us to do everything else.
All right, thanks, Sean. And Marlene.
Yes. So I think in term budget wise and looking at the finances, I think we can do a little bit better about asking for donations. I think that we do ask for sponsorships, and sponsorships long term are difficult to find new sponsors and to retain. But donations, one-time donations from members or from the community, and even from like new people that want to join, are that you can get a tax write-off. It's easier to kind of like put on your books, and it doesn't have to be a long-term commitment or a deeper commitment that is more difficult to substantiate when you're talking to executives. So that's one other maybe potential source maybe we can look a little bit deeper into. The second thing is I think that we really have to start driving a lot more of the early registrations. And the reason I say that is because the early registrations are going to come with how strong the agenda is and how much faster we can get that into the fold. So putting on the program committee hat that I had before, I'd say that we need to get really, 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 really star speakers to keynote and to come in and to kind of like really be like the bait for people to want to come to NANOG. So again, we want to make NANOG fun. And it's gonna show, and it's gonna continue to show in the financials all throughout. So it's kind of like one leg doesn't necessarily operate without the other. We kind of have to look at it at a multifaceted approach. We can also look into maybe diversifying the sponsorships. Maybe to John's point, maybe we can form some sort of NANOG alumni group or veterans at NANOG where we can get a sponsor to fly out a veteran speaker to talk at a college campus to then recruit more students to come in. So again, one thing leads to the next.
Okay, great. So number 5 here. I'm going to direct this one. I'll have Kendra take this one first. Serving on the NANOG board often requires balancing time commitments, work, and community obligations, as you pointed out much earlier. How do you plan to manage your board responsibilities along with your other professional and personal commitments?
I have no work-life balance and I never have, and that's not something I should probably admit to in an open room. I'm a workaholic. I always have been. No. I get great joy from giving back to this community. I always have. I don't find this to be work. My day job is work. I kind of have it honed to a science. I work very early in the morning hours based on where my clientele is. Most of you are sleeping, I guarantee that. So I have a lot of available time, or I would not. There's been years past where I considered running and I did not have the cycles available. And so that was very important for me to make sure that I would have the time to commit to do what is required by the board plus to make sure that I was able to give everything that I feel this community deserves of a board member, and a little extra because I just always put a little extra sprinkles on things. It's just me.
All right, thank you. Marlene.
I'm going to start by saying that I always have a lot on my plate. And that's just how I operate. I don't know about anyone else, but like I get bored if I have nothing to do. So at times, I want to say that it could lead to oversubscribing, but I think for me, because I'm at the age that I'm at now, and I'm at the point in my career and my life that I'm at now, I have learned the hard way that for everything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. So I'm saying yes to the board and saying no to something else to be able to make sure that I'm giving this the full time and breadth of attention that it requires. I have 3 children as of now. I have multiple other hats that I'm running, but it's not so much about all the hats that I'm wearing, but learning that I can only wear so many. And when I have my NANOG hat on, I have my NANOG hat on. So picking up and dropping, but also I feel like for me, because I'm not sure if it's ADD or not. I've never been diagnosed. But I work best when I have a lot of things going on, and I'm actually really good at seeing through patterns and identifying things even when there's a lot of chaos. So me being here today actually proves that a lot.
All right, thank you. Leslie.
So I'm not going to admit to a poor work-life balance, but I will admit to a multi-tiered nested to-do list that I follow fairly rigidly in terms of identifying priorities and commitments and whatnot. So, I mean, I do a lot of things. I'm on the NANOG board. I'm pretty active in the IETF. I'm a co-host of a podcast, and oh yeah, I have a day job, and 3 cats that sort of seem to think that they should have some attention. So it really is a question of lining up, how to best making sure I'm aware of what's coming up and how to best deliver on that. And to Marlene's point, yes, saying yes to this means saying no to other things. And I can identify things that have come up in the last year where it's been, would you like to do this in your career? I was like, well, nope, I'm doing that with NANOG and I can't do that. So it is a choice and you just support it.
Right, yep, thank you. John.
Yeah, so I actually am very familiar with saying no, and I've done that. If Kevin's still in here, I can't see him, but I actually left the Torex board because we started a new private equity venture in right before COVID, and concluded I couldn't do it effectively because of timing, and you have to be able to make those calls. And I think it's inappropriate to take one of these positions without constantly evaluating if you're providing the value that you should be to the organization. That's critical. I'm lucky enough to have recently transitioned from working a full-time 70-hour week private equity job with no work-life balance to being a consultant to several other things effectively part-time. And I'm going to continue doing that for a while. And I'd love to give back to the community because I have the time to do it. And recognizing when you have the time, I think, and when you don't, is a critical aspect of any leadership position.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Steve.
I think it's been well said here. You have to say no to certain things. There are priorities. Obviously, running for the board here entails, making a conscious set of trade-offs and prioritizing, NANOG, the community. And I think there's probably a little bit of dysfunction in the work-life balance, but I would point out I only have 2 cats. So maybe that gives me some more time than I thought I had.
The cat life balance, I understand. All right. This brings us to our last formal question here. And I'm going to just take this as an open table. So whoever feels eager enough to jump on it first, I'll let you, and then we'll just raise hands or figure out how to go to the next person. So open question is, what are some steps that you might take to help address the annual operating deficit? And I've got some examples here if you want to hear what I'm talking about here. So like net new sponsorships, additional attendees, reducing costs. Those are basic examples that you might think of. What other steps can you think of? Oh, okay, Kendra.
I'd mentioned earlier is, costs keep rising. We've seen in the news certain large tech companies are doing some layoffs. And so I think we're going to have to be very critical in our scope of how we do these meetings moving forward. And we may have to broaden scope of what we consider, not just geographically. I know how long we contract with our locations. I'm very aware of that. But taking those in future land of scoping those things out to make sure what we need to do to be able to make sure we're going into places that we can continue to kind of keep the financials in an upward mode. I also think that we're going to be hitting, in all honesty, a big push-pull with some of our ongoing sponsors that have committed multi-years and this, that, and the other, because what is the first thing to go when, our government's on what week shutdown, that are going to pull back our marketing dollars. And if you're not being realistic, that we have to be planning for how do we get around that? Do we go to some big donations? Do we start really heavily looking to fundraise as a board? You are naive if you are not planning for that. And the fact that we don't know what we don't know, but we have to start looking to plan for that, what we don't know, because of what we've been seeing in our own community and some of these very large companies that, we don't ever expect those kind of things to be happening, and they're happening. So it's something that I think we really need to plan to look at what other alternate ways we can continue to bring money into NANOG. And if that means I got to work another 2 hours a month on the NANOG board, guess what? You got to do that.
All right, thanks. John, you were right there a second.
Yeah, so I think, the biggest thing for me is location. And, if you look at the historical NANOG locations, NANOG made, I would call, mistakes, but they were, I think, places people wanted to have conferences over a 20-year history or so. We've gotten better at that, but I don't think we can have a conference in a place that doesn't have a big airport. I don't think we can have a conference in a place where we don't comfortably fit. And people just won't come. And there's been a number of times where hotel rooms were booked out. This is a great example. This conference is definitely capped by the number of hotel rooms that were available because people couldn't get rooms. I know people from my former employer that are staying at other hotels and debated not coming because of it. And those sorts of details matter. And we got that. That's kind of bringing our focus back to the biggest thing we do is the conferences. So we got to do them right. And unfortunately, doing them right means you're not going to do Ann Arbor again. It was awesome when we did it. We're not going to do it. If it only has one runway, we probably shouldn't do it. I love San Diego, but San Diego's actually hard to fly in and out of because it's incredibly unreliable timing wise. Those have to go into our calculus. And I think we can raise money other ways, and we should try. We should always brainstorm as a board how to do that. There's known unknowns and there's unknown unknowns. I think the unknown unknowns are big right now with the governments and with the AI sort of revolution and tech company hiring. That to me says we have to have a bigger buffer more than anything.
All right. Leslie just popped her hand up first, so.
Yeah, I think that in terms of steps, I think the first step is making sure that we crisply understand what, commercial world calls value proposition. We need to be pretty clear about who we are as a network operator group because the number of people who come and the number of sponsors willing to sponsor are sort of tied to each other and tightly related to, what value are we offering. The as Kendra noted, the number of people who are coming is somewhat capped because of travel realities. I think that the sponsorship dollars are probably also somewhat capped. So once we've figured out our value proposition there and grown a vibrant community, then I find myself wondering, what can we do with membership, right? How can we get more members of NANOG to demonstrate that it really is a community? And that's also tied in with the question of what is our value proposition? Why is it meaningful to be part of the NANOG community?
All right. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I would echo what Leslie here said about understanding what the value is that NANOG brings. The meetings have a specific value, and I think the board and the staff have done an excellent job in terms of kind of optimizing the cost structures around things, and I think they've been they've learned over the years what it takes to run an effective meeting and driving towards a more profitable meeting, for lack of a better way to put it. But is there additional value that we can provide to sponsors and to members that we should be exploring? I think workshops are an excellent example of finding areas where we can give more reasons for there to be active attendees. And also, I am loath to use the term monetize, but frankly, like there has to be a value in somebody putting on a workshop, and there is, and often there is a value to doing that. Coming from the vendor space, I have to be able to rationalize why I'm going. What are the engagements that I can have? And NANOG has always been a high value meeting for the sheer breadth of technical, high quality technical folks that you will get to talk to. But that only goes so far. And if there's opportunities for us to, work with our existing sponsors and to look in adjacent domains to find sponsors and areas where we can add value, either by tweaking our format or enhancing what we're already doing, or adopting new new activities at our meetings, to focus on meetings for the moment, then we should be actively exploring those. And I think we're already starting to explore some of that. It's not fully realized, and I think there's a lot of room for for us to kind of expand on that broadly. I'll just park it right there.
All right, thanks, Steve. And Marlene.
Yeah, I actually had a really good idea from one of the I think he said he was the oldest member in the community, Joe Hess. He said it would be great if we had more like fun activities to do, but actually like in a way of like solving a problem. So is there any way to maybe we can maybe get the hackathons to be a little bit more prevalent outside of just like the NANOG meetings so that we could get sponsors to maybe if you have a problem, like let's get the community to try to solve it, but kind of like pay to play type of thing. That could be a potential, fun to do. So
Did you have a?
I had a follow-up on that. I think that's a great point. And as somebody who served on the hackathon committee and who has, like worked to find sponsors, there are some unique challenges here. And I guess it would be, I kind of feel like I'm cheating by jumping in on this, but I would also call upon the members to, as you're looking for opportunities to volunteer and you're working into these committees, or if you have ideas, there's the committees are gated in terms of not gated, but there's only so many brains in the room or on the Zoom. And if there are ideas that we should be exploring here, it's also incumbent upon the membership to bring those ideas or opportunities to whatever committee might be relevant to that or to the board.
That's a great point, and that's a great way to close out. I think our questions here for you, the candidates. We'll do a last statements here. We've got about 15 minutes, so and some final announcements, and maybe if we've got time, we can take a couple of questions. So I'll 90 seconds to 2 minutes for a last statement, and we'll start with John and work back this way.
Yeah, I think you're hearing from all of us actually that we want to make the community better and stronger into the future. That's definitely where I'm at. I won't be afraid to tell people when I think something's not working, but we have to be respectful. We have to do that in a respectful way, based on facts and data. I just encourage us to remember what's driving the economics of it and move it forward. I think I also want to personally figure out how to get newer, younger members involved in what I call the hallway track. Because for years I've found the most valuable part of NANOG to be the hallway track, where the deals are done, where those things are done, and I don't really know how to actually evangelize that to other people, but I'd love to figure it out and help that community grow. That's what drives the membership. And by the way, there is one peer conference, PDC, that has a ridiculous hallway track and is a nonprofit and has grown every year for the last 10. And I want to figure out how to do that at NANOG with the hallway track, because actually NANOG's hallway track is better. It's just smaller.
Yeah, Marlene.
I guess as a closing statement, I'll just say thank you for allowing me to be part of this amazing community. I'd be honored to serve on the board, but if I don't make it this round, I will be back. So that's it.
I just want to thank everybody that took the time out of their morning to come in and listen to all of us and our thoughts and ideas. I don't think you can go wrong with anybody up here. I think everybody wants what's best for the organization. And, I think it's something out of sheer want for what is best for the organization. I think I lead with a very strong opinion often, and I'm not going to tell you I don't have one, but I also am somebody that cares deeply and wants what is best for everyone around me, and I care very much what happens to this organization, and it is the absolute reason that I decided to stand for this nomination. Is I want this organization to continue to grow and continue to be better. And I'm willing to put 100% of myself into doing that.
Leslie.
So I'm going to actually start by saying that I've really enjoyed working with Michael Costello on the board, and I think the board has really enjoyed working with him. So I'm sorry that he can't be here today. But if as part of your voting decision-making process, you want to see how he would answer some of these types of questions, I encourage you to look at the recording of the 2022 candidate forum where he was present and answered many of these types of questions. For myself, I will say that I've enjoyed the 3 years that I've been on the board. Interesting problems. I think we've made some progress and solved some pretty hairy problems. And I kind of feel like we're midway and I want to see the next installment of this. So I would remain happy to continue to participate if that's what the community wants. And yeah, don't forget to vote.
And Steve.
I would just like to say I've enjoyed my engagement with the NANOG community over the years. I've learned a tremendous amount. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to volunteer and serve on the various committees. I would look to to continue that activity on the board. Obviously, I wouldn't be here, and if I weren't interested in that and engaged on that. I also Leslie very graciously called out Michael Costello's contribution. At the risk of hogpiling on that, I should be careful when I use that metaphor. But no, Michael's been a steady hand, and I think a very strong contributor to much of the financial recovery that we've seen, and many of the optimizations, and from every interaction I've had with him, an outstanding board candidate. And with that, I would really like to encourage the membership to vote, and also to seek out opportunities to engage and volunteer in the NANOG community as well.
All right, thank you. We do have about 10 minutes here. If folks have questions for the board candidates, we can probably take one or two as long as you have quick responses. So come up to the microphones and I'll try to pick a side here as we get to it. Go right over here, house left.
Hi, Brian Fields, Tampa Bay Access Exchange. And, I think NANOG has been based on network engineering people for a long time. So I put this question forward to everybody running for candidate or all the candidates. When and or what was the last configuration change you made on a production network? Thank you.
Go ahead. This will be open, so just.
Sorry, you have to say. Go ahead.
I don't know, maybe 47 hours ago.
Couldn't possibly remember. I meant to mention earlier that I tend to work on the inter part of internetworking. So in my day job, for instance, our organization is responsible for stewarding the manners, mutually agreed norms for routing security effort. So that's where we touch with network operators.
I email or call the knock.
I don't want to say that I'm a network engineer because I am not. But I have tested on production test beds. And that was about a year ago, if I'm being honest. But that's it.
Sunday, looking at weird things that showed up in the public Reddit for one of my customers, and then opening tickets with the knock to deal with what I found.
All right. Over here on house right.
All righty, John Alcock, network engineer for Highland Telephone. I'm a network engineer for a small ISP that serves Kentucky and Tennessee. We have 15,000 customers. My problem is that I don't have the resources the big boys have. If I have an issue, Comcast, Charter, AT&T, they can call the back end line when they have a issue with peering or IP blocks and whatnot. I don't have that. What would you guys do to give us smaller operators the resources that the big guys have so that we can have that backline in? And what would you do to promote that?
I already put together an idea, or not put together. I shared an idea earlier where we could have some sort of maybe like I guess hackathon light or hackathon air, if you want to think about it that way, where some of the community members can go on and post some of their real-time issues and get some real-time solutions. But it'd be more of a plug and play type of thing. I wouldn't have the precise dollar figure into how much it would cost, but I could most certainly, come up with some figures that might work, and that would be probably affordable and would engage a lot of other people with similar situations, other ISPs.
Yeah, Steve.
I would I guess what I would offer here is a couple of things. One, NANOG is the place where you will meet the people who can help you establish that that network to find the back channel to solve problems that might not exist formally with as they do with the larger operators in those operators in any form. Maybe one way that NANOG can be effective here is in maybe formalizing some of the BOFs or the meet and greets to establish these back channel networks. Over the years, there have been VM exchanges, these sorts of things that have been useful in facilitating better operations. Honestly, I've lost track of where we're at with some of that stuff, and maybe this is something that we should be doing from a community building perspective, is to kind of rekindle some of those activities.
So I was going to say, I think this is a great example of the hallway track needing to be formalized. And so I mentioned that earlier, but I think it's really important because I've been that ISP and been the big ISP, but I've been at NANOG the whole time. And at least in my personal experience, that call that he wants to make is the buddy you sat at the social with talking about the last bug somebody found in some Juniper device. That's the guy you want to call. And helping and figuring out how NANOG can foster those connections to be stronger, it's frankly the very largest value NANOG provides to its members. And I'm not saying I know how to do that. And I don't think any of us really do, but that's something we collectively have to figure out as a group, because that's NANOG's superpower, and helping the next generation get access to that superpower is just so critical.
And virtualizing it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Barely time for two more. We'll see if we can get to it. Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Gilmore. I'm representing Tigger. NANOG is an engineering organization, but you are the board of a corporation. So I'm going to ask you a business question. Show of hands, how many of you can say within, let's say, closest million, how much revenue NANOG brought in the last year? Show of hands, just raise your hand if you can. Yeah. I'm going to believe that Leslie does because of reasons, probably Steve too, but I honestly wonder, John, what do you think it is?
It's like 2.5 or 3 million on the presentation earlier this morning.
It was on the presentation, but that was January through September, sir.
More than that.
So in other words, no. So these are the kind of things that you have to do as a board. You are a fiduciary. This is not pretend. This is not whatever. This is an actual corporation. So these are the kind of things I think are important. And while I'm glad that some of you have logged in the last 47 hours, that's not what I'm looking for when I want to vote for a board member.
Thanks, Patrick. Leslie.
Yes. Adair, internet.
Adair. Oh my gosh, I can't see. Yes, Adair. Thank you.
Light behind me. I wanted to give Marlene some good news. I checked the statistics while you were speaking, and we are actually at 16% of women or of attendees are female. So we did it.
Okay. Awesome.
Awesome. All right. Now, after that last personal gaffe, I do have a couple of announcements here. First off, I hope that all of our board candidates will have a little bit of extra time after this session to stand outside and do a little meet and greet for folks who are interested in that. If you can't, I understand. There's more conference to go on. There is another session in here in just a couple of minutes. And it is 11:25, so in about 5 minutes, you should be getting an email that says that elections are open. So I suggest you check your emails, log on to the NANOG website, and click that elections link and start voting. Right? And that pretty much concludes the 2025 Board Candidate Forum. I want to thank all of our candidates here for taking the time to answer your questions, being so upfront and personable. This is one of the strongest candidates selections that I've had the pleasure to interview. So this is great. Thank you so much. Thank you all, and stick around for more NANOG.